Right.
Okay, Bismillah. I started the timer. Bismillah, Assalamu alaikum. In today's video, in basically this debate, we'll be discussing Quran preservation. Right now, I'll make a variety of arguments in my first 10 minutes. Then we can discuss the responses in the rebuttals. My first argument for Quran preservation is basically the massive number of first century manuscripts that we have. There are about 2 dozen manuscripts of the Quran from the first century, and scholars such as Haytham Sidki have said that the entirety of the Quran is attested in the first century. So we have numerous manuscripts of the Quran from the first century. The entire Quran is attested in the first century. There's massive manuscript evidence for this point. And this is the reason basically a lot of non-Muslim scholars recognize that no one challenges basically the point about Uthmani Quran being preserved. Right? They might try to make false claims about before that, but no one challenges the point about Uthmani Quran being preserved. For example, I'll give 2 references. Angelica Novarth in the book Cambridge Companion to the Quran, right? In her article, I think it's on page 100, where she says that there is more and more evidence turning up for the standard Islamic narrative, and basically the part about there being an early fixed Uthmanic recension, right? This is even referenced in, I think, Routledge's book on the companion to the Quran, and scholars such as Haytham Sidki, Sean Anthony, Marine Van Putin, a lot of other Orientalists, they will agree to this point. We have even manuscripts close to or during the time of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam or the time of Uthmanic recension. For example, the Tubingen manuscript is dated between 649 and 675, right? Uthmanic recension is directly in the middle of that. The Birmingham manuscript is even earlier than that. So we have the entire Uthmani Quran attested in the first century, which is a very strong proof for Quran preservation because it's direct manuscript evidence. By comparison, for instance, we have nothing from the Bible in the first century. So you can see the standard, right? How much better Quran is preserved. There is no two questions about this point. Firstly, this is the external evidence for Quran preservation, right? There are a lot of internal proofs for Quran preservation as well. What do I mean by that? Western scholars such as Raymond Farren, among others, Michelle Cupers, Muslim and non-Muslim scholars such as Neil Robinson, who I think is a Muslim or claims to be a Muslim, and a lot of scholars have discovered that Quran has a unique literary structure. What does this mean? I'll give a simple example of a structure, right? These are 5 lines, and I'll explain to you what structure means here. Woke up, I ate breakfast, I went to work, I came back, I ate dinner, I went to sleep. Now you can see the first line mirrors the fifth line. Woke up, went to sleep. The second, ate lunch, ate breakfast. These line mirrors. So this is our literary coherence. What scholars have found is that this type of structural coherence is present in numerous surahs of the Quran. These are longest. These range from longest surahs to the shortest surahs. Now, if the Quran was being tampered with, right? This structure is very unlikely to be maintained because it's too complicated for that. If the surahs were arbitrarily mixed up or jumbled up or added up, right, then this structure would not remain because this cannot be formed by accident. The only way such literary coherence can be maintained is if the Quran is preserved, is if the structure goes back to an original source. So this structure is present in numerous surahs of the Quran, which shows that the Quran is preserved. Another argument for Quran preservation would be it's similar. It's actually a detailed expansion on this argument, right? A lot of Christians whine about Quran basically being abrogated, right? Now we know Surah Azab had basically 200 more surahs than it does now. There was a lot of abrogation from it, right? Now, if the ayat were randomly lost, right, as the Christians claim, then we wouldn't expect Surah Azab to have a literary and structural coherence. Now, but what scholars have found, for example, the reference I'm giving is a book published by Routledge. It's basically from Salma M.S. Al Hawa. She does a literary analysis on Surah Ahzab and Surah Qiyamah. The point about Surah Azab is relevant here. It shows that it has a very precise literary coherence. It's not a ring or chiastic structure, but the literary coherence is right there, clear cut. There's a clear pattern there. There's a clear cut message there, and the sections in which Surah is divided into, they interlink with each other. If the ayats were being randomly lost, right? this structure would not be maintained. The only way this structure can be maintained if the abrogation was basically from divine revelation and it was extremely precise. And the fact that this structure remains in a surah from which 200 ayat were abrogated shows that how brilliant, how precise, how mind-blowing the preservation and structure of the Quran is. Now again, this structure cannot form by accident, which is why this order, if there was tampering, this structure wouldn't remain. But the fact that the structure exists proves preservation. Another proof for Quran preservation is basically the stylometric studies done on the Quran. Now, I think Sadeghi, the Western scholar, he did a study on the stylometric study on the Quran, and there have been a lot of studies done on stylometry on the Quran by Halim Sayoud. What these studies show is basically Quran has one author. If the Quran was basically, if large sections of it were being taken away or added, right, Quran wouldn't have one author, it would have multiple authors. But the fact it has one author is an argument for its preservation. Now, some can claim that this doesn't show that every single verse or ayat is not is preserved. Stylometry can't show that. But what it shows is that larger sections are preserved. The point of every verse, every ayat being preserved, that is shown by the structural coherence of the Quran that I mentioned earlier. Now, another proof of the literary and structural coherence of the Quran, right, and another proof of preservation of the Quran basically is the fact that there are a lot of linguistic miracles, I'd call them, in the Quran, that if the Quran was being jumbled up or tampered with, these simply wouldn't exist. I'll give some examples of it. For example, in Surah 2, Surah Baqarah, right, the exact there are 286 verses. The half of that is ayat 143. The word middle appears in the exact middle of the surah. If Quran was jumbled up or tampered, this kind of precision would not be expected. In Surah 3, Surah Al Imran, right? Basically, Quran says that Prophet Isa alayhi salam, Prophet Adam alayhi salam, their example is similar. What we find is in the Quran, 25 times the name of Hazrat Isa alayhi salam is present, 25 times name of Hazrat Adam alayhi salam is present. This is very unlikely if the Quran was being jumbled or tampered with, and the examples like this are numerous. Another example is basically, uh, I'll just give one more example regarding this. Quran in Surah Nisa, ayat 82, right? It says basically, no one would find in it any contradictions. The word used is ikhtilafan, right? Now, literally, if you take it absolutely literally, Quran is saying that there won't be more than one example of the word ikhtilafan in it. What we find is this is the case. The word ikhtilafan appears in the Quran only once. If Quran was jumbled or tampered with, right, or not preserved, this is quite unlikely. But the fact that there are examples like this, and there are absolutely numerous examples like this kind of literary structural coherence would not be present if Quran was tampered with or lost. This can only be present if the Quran is preserved. So we have both stylometric arguments, arguments for linguistic miracles, arguments from structure of the Quran for Quran not being tampered with. These internal preservation arguments prove Quran was not tampered with. More than that, the manuscript evidence proves that basically Quran is preserved, which is an even stronger proof for Quran preservation. So I don't think there's any way around these arguments. One more thing I like to add about this debate, right? Basically, call to serve has been lying against me multiple times, right? This
We're
guy
hitting the
said
one
that
minute mark.
he didn't challenge me to a debate on Quran and Hadith preservation, that I challenged to him, right? I dared this guy to show photos of his back channel because he challenged me to a debate on Quran and preservation. Then he ran away. So again, he can prove me to be a liar by publishing his photos of his back channel. So I would challenge him to do that, and I would ask him to stop lying. Inshallah, I think I've made more than enough arguments for my time, for my position. So I'm ending my time. He can start now.
Cole, you got 10 minutes?
All right, let me just reset my time here so that we are both in the same path. So I'm starting as soon as I begin speaking. All right, so I'm going to start. Praise the Lord Jesus Christ for this debate and for this time to engage with you. And I pray the Lord be glorified and be exalted and be lifted up on high. And I pray that his Muhammad's knee should bow and his tongue should confess and profess that Jesus Christ is Lord to the glory of God the Father. But notice what he said here. This is my opening. I'm not actually um, refuting or responding to what he said. He just gave you a standard narrative with little or less proof or references, right? But ironically, he forgot to tell you the holes in the narrative. And I'm going to begin. Notice the sources I'll be citing. I am not going to simply cite modern scholars. He said he would do an internal critique to show and demonstrate that the Quran is actually preserved. But all you got, ladies and gentlemen, is nothing but a speech, right? Is nothing but his opinion and what he thinks his scholars or whatever he's quoting is actually saying. So let me begin quickly here. Notice what here, and I'm going to start from here, and I'm going to ask Muhammad never again to dare say that his Quran is preserved, because Jalal al-Din, right, Abdul Rahman, in his books, Abu Bakr al-Sayyuti, in Khitan fi Ulum Quran, right, volume number 2, page number 25. This is what it says here. Abdullah ibn Umar reported and said, let none of you, that includes Muhammad, that includes AK, that includes the Muslim Ummah, let none of you say that I have acquired the whole Quran. How does he know what of it contains when much of the Quran has disappeared? Let him instead say, I have gotten what has survived. This is coming from Ajaluddin, right? From Al-Sayyuti. And here I have another reference from Abu Ubaid, Abu Ubaid ibn Ka'b, Fidel al-Quran, and Fidel al-Quran by Qasim ibn Salim, page number 2, volume 2, page number 135, again affirming the very same thing, that Muslims have no basis by which they can argue that they have perfectly preserved Quran. Here's another one. This is coming from Ubayd ibn Ka'b. Notice the people I'm citing. I'm not citing I'm not citing Western scholarship. I'm citing from his own Muslim scholars. Now watch this. Ubayd ibn Ka'b said, to have, and notice he mentioned about Surat al-Azab, but he forgot to tell us, right? And I'm going to challenge him, Muhammad, give me those abrogated verses, right? Because Surat al-Azab, ayah 33, chapter Surah 33, was once of the length of Surah al-Baqarah, Barah, chapter 2, which means it must have had at least 200 verses which are not found in today's Quran. Now, question to Muhammad, where are those verses that are not found? And if you're going to appeal to Nasikh al-Mansukh, then show me those verses that abrogated the 200 verses, because your Quran in chapter 2, verse 106 says, if Allah was to cause any verse to be forgotten or abrogated, He will bring something similar to it, right? Or something better. So I challenge you. Give me those verses that abrogated Surah Al-Azab 33, those 200 verses, and show me the 200 verses that actually confirms the abrogation of those verses. Now here's another one. And by the way, my assertion to this is coming from Al-Balki Al-Sunnah Al-Kubra, volume 8, page number 221. But again, it goes further and it goes more destroying. Again, Ad-Jaladdin al-Sayuti, quoting scholars like At-Tabarani. Notice the ones I'm citing. At-Tabarani, Al-Hakim, and Ibn Shu'aib. And they state that Hudayfa narrated that the surah which you call Surah October is actually Surah Al-Azab. Another one, the wrath. And you just recited 1/4 of what used to be recited. Question, Muhammad, what are the other verses that used to be recited in Surah Al-Azab? And since you called into question the Nasikh al-Mansukh, again, you still have to answer me that question. Give me those verses. Further on, notice, speak about perfect preservation. This is coming from Ahmed von Defer, Ulum al-Quran, Islamic Foundation, page number 48. Now here is a discussion between the Qira'ah or Mus'haf of Ubay ibn Ka'b and Abdullah ibn Masud. Now notice this, let me quote this. Abdullah ibn Masud's version of the Quran did not have chapter 1, Surah Al-Fatiha, and Surah Al-Falaq, 113, and Al-Nas, 114. That is, there were no due prayers. Ubay ibn Ka'b reported to have had the following extra surahs. Surah 115 and 116, Surah Al-Kal and Surah Al-Hadaf. Now, speak about perfect preservation. Muhammad, can you cite for me these verses, these surahs? Surah 115 and 116, which appeared and existed in the Quran of Ubay ibn Ka'b. But here's what's getting interesting again. Notice this. Your scholar Ibn Abbas acknowledging that the Quran you have, if it has parts that are missing, then you have to replace the missing parts with poetry. Exactly what you just argued about. Notice this. Here's Ibn Abbas citing about missing or lost Quranic verses in his hadith by Ibn al-Harj, right? Al-Kasilani, Fitra al-Bari, volume 13, page number 437, and it says there, if parts of the Quran are lost, then complete it with poetry. Al-Shar, Al-Shar, poetry, brother. So even Ibn Abbas acknowledges that your Quran has missing verses, and the only thing that Muslims have to do with those missing verses, they have to replace them, right, with poetry. This is what your scholar says. Further on, and I got more to say to this. Notice this. Yes, Sahih Bukhari. Now, this is about the stoning verses which appeared and was practiced by your companions, by the companions of Muhammad, the Tabi'ins. Because here, Umar ibn al-Khattab, notice, Umar ibn al-Khattab says that who's one of the Muhammad's most and well-known companions, says that they used to practice the verses of stoning, and those verses were actually appearing in the Quran, right? And they were practiced by the companions in regards to adultery. Now, Muslim Ahmad, volume 302, book number 2, hadith number 209, confirms this narration that yes, there were these verses that were reviewed. Now, I'm going to ask Muhammad, can you please present to us those verses from the Quran, right, that were about stoning somebody, right, for adultery? But if you're going to appeal to chapter 24, verse 2, it is not speaking about adultery, it's speaking about fornication. So even that won't help your case in case you want to appeal to that. But with limited time, let me quickly go to Uthmanic recension, the one he appealed to. Notice, at the compilation of Uthman's request, when they were compiling the hadith, the Quran, sorry, right, in the Qurayshi dialect. And this he sent, we know, to 5 provinces. Basra is one of them, Medina is one of them, Mecca is one of them. But notice what your Caliph used to say. This is from one of the traditions, and it's reported by Abu Ubaid ibn Qasim, Fisal al-Quran, hadith number 468, which appears in major works of his genre, works like Kitab al-Musahaf of Ibn Dawud and al-Banari. Notice what Uthman used to say in regards to his recension. Uthman himself says, looking after the finished product, after Zayd ibn Thabit has completed his works. Notice what to say, what Uthman said. He said, after the finished product, that there were indeed some errors inside of the finished Quran. Now I'm going to ask you, Muhammad, what were those errors that existed in those Quran that Uthman standardized? But I'm going to give you a little help. Here's Aisha, the mother of the believers, right? And the son of Uthman giving us an insight of what those verses were. For example, quoting chapter 2, verse 162, right? And here, this is coming from Al-Zubair ibn Khairat, Harun bin Musa, Al-Harjaj, Abu Ubaid, and this is the isnad. Notice what it says here. When the Musaf was written, it was presented to Uthman. He, Uthman, found some errors, about 25 of them, and he said, do not change them, for the Arabs would change them with their tongues. Question, brother, what were those errors that Uthman said not to change, and what were those errors that he acknowledged that even the finished products that he had still contained errors? Now, let me give an example here, right? This is from Tafsir al-Badawi, right? Where he's quoting on chapter 4, verse 167. Aisha, the mother of the believers, says this in reciting or pointing out an error within the Quran that you have today. Yeah, inna alladhina amanu alladhina wadu al sabiyuna, and this is an error within the Quran, right?
Wait, that's
What,
suited.
what did Uthman say? Uthman say, leave it there. It does not make any difference in respect to what is halal and haram. So
Your
even
10
the
minutes are up.
recension of Uthman that you have
Let
is
him finish
disturbing
his
me.
sentence.
Even the recension that you have, right? The
His 10
recension
minutes
that you
are
have,
actually up.
why is he interrupting
Cole,
me?
I said your time's up. Just finish the sentence you're saying, bro.
I didn't hear your 1 minute, bro.
Why
Oh,
can't you
sorry.
shut up when your time's up? Huh?
He didn't say the one. Did you say the 1 minute, AK?
No, I didn't. I didn't. Just finish
Don't
your
you have a
sentence,
timer
please.
running?
So that is why I took it as him saying I have a minute left. Not that I want to speak
Go for it.
more,
Go for it. Go
but
for
I
it.
took it
Finish,
as
man.
him cautioning that
It's my fault.
I've got a
It's
minute
my fault.
remaining.
You can't shut up whining. Now let me start my time.
There we go. Again, you
Uh,
just said you should not
bro
use this
Muhammad,
word,
bro Muhammad.
right?
Right, guys. Cole, just finish the little bit that you were saying, and then Muhammad, you can start on your bit.
Yeah, yeah. Since you just interrupted me, so again, I pointed out that Aisha points out not only in chapter 4, verse
I
162,
interrupted him
but in Surah Al
after his
Maryam.
time was
Bro,
up.
guys,
Hold on. What's wrong with this guy?
One
No,
sec,
because
guys, we're
his
gonna go
time
out
was
of
up,
control.
then
We're
I
gonna go out of
interrupted
control.
him.
It's my fault. It's my fault. Cole, just finish the point. Muhammad, jump in when I say to you jump in.
All right. So I just want to give the reference, by the way, right? Again, an error pointed out by the mother of the believers in Surah Al-Ma'idah, and I cited the verse. In aladina amanu wal aladina ahud al sabiyuna. Not only did Aisha say it was a mistake, but even the son of Uthman al-Aban said this is a mistake in the Quran. Speak about perfect preservation, and I gathered that reference from Tafsir al-Badawi, right? Commenting on Quran chapter 4, verse 162. Now I got more, and this is why I wanted more time, because I got a list of things to present to you.
Do
But
you
let him
want
go
to
on.
whine
Let's
again?
call it. That's a minute on top of
Your
what you
time
said.
is up now. Shut
Yep,
your
go ahead.
mouth.
Let him go ahead.
Go, Muhammad. You got 5 minutes.
Okay, give me a moment. I'm starting my timer.
No problem.
I'm starting my timer now. Firstly, uh, if this clown is going to bring up some random references, right, which we don't know the grading of whether they are authentic or fabricated, I'm not going to accept it. Neither should any Muslim. Why? Because this clown is known for lying, and if you want proof of it, go watch my debate on Islam being God from him. Seriously, go watch it. Now I'll start addressing his nonsense one by one, right? His first claim was about abrogation and how we need to preserve the abrogated verses, right? That's not the Islamic criteria for preservation. Why? Because Allah says in the Quran that Allah causes some verses to be ayat to be forgotten, right? When we Muslims here talk about perfect preservation, the question is perfect preservation according to whose criteria? The Islamic criteria or the one that the Christians are pulling out of thin air? The Islamic criteria, right? So according to the Islamic criteria, we don't need to preserve abrogated verses. So what's the problem there if we don't have abrogated verses? Again, this is just beyond desperate whining, and I can challenge you. He won't address the point about the structure of the Quran, Surah Azab, and abrogation. He said that I was not referencing anything. Every single point I said, I referenced. The point about manuscripts, I linked references for manuscript. I linked the reference from Raymond Farren's book because I used it. I linked the reference from the Routledge book because I used it, right? The rest of those are ayat from the Quran. So what's he talking about me not referencing? I mean, seriously, just because someone is desperate, right, you shouldn't accept their claim seriously. Now, he said that there are extra surahs in the Musaf of Ubay bin Ka'b. No, they are not. Why? Because those surahs are actually known as du'as in Islam. And even some Western scholars such as Noldik accept that those are not surahs. Why? Well, for linguistic reasons. Two reasons. First reason. In one of those, right, which is Dubai Qunut basically, these are non-prayers in Islam. It says wala nakfiruka. If it was Quranic in the Quranic style, it would have said wala nakfiru bika. And Sean Anthony, even though he says that these are from the Quran, he does accept that this argument is compelling against his position. More than that, those so-called surahs have Allahumma without kul and kala previously. In the Quran, whenever Allahumma is mentioned, kul and kala are mentioned before that. So we have linguistic reasons for seeing that these so-called surahs are not in the Quran. More than that, these are preserved in Islamic traditions. The Hanafis use them in the witr prayer. So, I mean, this claim has no leg to stand on. Secondly, the point about Ibn Masud Radiyallahu anhu, right? We have a reference from him, I think it's in Tafsir Tabri, where he says that if he had written Surah Fatiha in the Quran, right, he would have written it behind every surah. So, according to him, a surah does not have to be in his Musaf to be in the Quran. This is his literal words. So, the argument about Surah 1 and Surah 113, 114, if not, they are not written in the Quran, they are not part of the Quran according to him, fails. More than that, we have Mutawatir Qiraat. 4 of the 10 Mutawatir Qiraat go through Ibn Masud Razi Allah anhu. All of them have these surahs. So, this whining has no leg to stand on. Next, he brought up some references for basically the companions disagreeing, right, about the Quran. First he needs to give references and he needs to show that those are authentic. Because if he's just going to whine, no one will accept that whining. He needs to show that those are authentic for anyone to accept them. Firstly. Secondly, I'll link a reference here, right? Basically, Theodore Noldike, an Orientalist scholar, he accepts this in his book that no companion disagreed with the Musaf of Hazrat Usman Razi Allah Anhu.
1 minute.
Even he mentioned that Hazrat Ali Razi Allah Anhu did not disagree with it. This is mentioned by a Western scholar. You don't need to take a Muslim's word on it. Listen to what your own Western Orientalist scholars are telling you in this regard. So his whining basically has no leg to stand on. Now, again, he made the points about abrogation, right? I think those are just self-evident. Look, the the question he wants to ask, right? Is the Quran perfectly preserved? Keep this in mind. This is very simple question. Perfectly preserved according to whose criteria? The Islamic criteria or the criteria he's pulling out of thin air? We can show the Quran is preserved according to the Islamic criteria, as my arguments and responses show. Now, I dare this clown to address the points I made, address the point about structural coherence, address the point about Surah Azab, structural coherence and abrogation. My 5 minutes are up.
All right.
Perfect.
So can I go, AK?
Yeah,
Start the
yeah, go.
time.
Let me know when you start.
All right. So again, he questioned the references, but he didn't hear the people I was quoting. Neither did he hear the books I was citing. By the way, everything I cited, it is sahih, brother. I have the references with me, so you cannot. The burden of proof is on you to discredit and show me where Fidal al Quran, Filim al Quran, right, or those verses that I posted from Al Sayyuti to say that this verse, these narrations are actually false. The burden of proof is on you. I have with me tons of scholars that agree on this topic, on this matter. They do affirm that these references are actually sahih, brother, authentic. Going further, notice he said something about Ibn Masud, and he lied to you guys by saying that Ibn Masud's Mus'haf did actually contain the 114 verses of the Quran, when in actual sense we know from even At-Tabari's works and Ibn Ishaq's materials that Ibn Masud refused to give his Mus'haf to Uthman to standardize. And I have here a reference. Now notice what I'm citing. M. Jama al-Zadawi, volume 7, page number 311. And it says this. Abdullah Rahman al-Zaid Ibn Said said, Abdullah ibn Masud used to erase al muwahatan, seeking refuge. The two surahs, Surah 113 and 114. Ibn Masud used to erase them from his Quran and say, and I quote, "It is not part of Allah's book." Al-Jama al-Zawadi, volume 7, page number 311. So here you have Ibn Masud saying, no, 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 no. Surah 113 and 114, they were not part of the Quran. Why? Because here you will see in Takhrij al-Musnad by al-Shuwaib, page number 249, graded Sahih. And it appears in al-Nasai, and it's also in al-Sunan al-Kulbra by Imam Ahmad. And there, the Quran that was confirmed by his prophet before he died a year before, it is the Quran of Abdullah ibn Masud. Why? Because he cites a narration from Sahih Bukhari, volume number 4999, book 66, hadith number 21, when he says you take from four. From who? Abdullah ibn Masud, Salim, Mudaha, and Ubayd ibn Kab. That is why Abdullah ibn Masud refused to give his recension to Uthman to standardize. Now, further on, he spoke about abrogating or abrogation, and in regards to Surah Al-Azab, but he didn't hear what I said. You had 200 verses that were equivalent to Surah Al-Barha, chapter 2. Where are those 200 verses, brother? And if you're going to cite Nasikh al-Mansukh, abrogated and abrogation, then give me those verses that abrogated the 200 verses in respect to what your Quran says in chapter 2, verse 106, that if Allah, and you butchered your own text for crying out loud, brother. Chapter 2, verse 106 says, if Allah causes any verses to be forgotten, He will bring something similar or better. Give me those 200 verses that existed in Surah Al-Azhab, because that verse, that surah was equivalent to chapter 2, Surah Al-Baqarah, right? Give me those verses that abrogated those verses. But here, I got more. Further on. Not only that, I even say to you,
One.
showing that your mother of the believers, Aisha, with the son of Uthman, they recounted an era which exists in Surah Al-Ma'idah, right? Inna aladhina amanu, aladhina wal sabiyuna. This is an era, brother, right? And this is coming from Al-Zubair, Waqala, Harun ibn Musa, Waqala, Al-Hajjaj, Waqala, Abu Ubaid, right? And this is all coming with the authentic isnad. So again, I have the reference in front of me, right? And I'll give you the reference if you want it. So please, brother, address what I'm bringing. Speak about perfect preservation when you don't even have, you as a Muslim cannot claim that you have the entire Quran. How do you know when much of it was lost in the Battle of Yamama? Go ahead.
Perfect timing. Muhammad, let me know when you want to start.
Okay, I'm starting my time now. Remember, I said in the end of my time, this clown wouldn't respond to any of my points. I think that's self evident. Now, he was whining again and again about abrogated verses, right? And we need to show those abrogated ayat. Why? Why do Muslims need to preserve those ayat for perfect preservation? Again, answer my question, clown. Perfect preservation according to whose criteria? The Islamic criteria or Christian criteria? So that one is, that contention is just buried. Secondly, the point about, he was mentioning the point about these narrations are authentic, right? I can guarantee those narrations are not authentic, and if he's claiming they are, then he needs to bring references from scholars authenticating them. I won't take his word on any Arabic reference, and neither should you, because this clown is well known for lying about these points. So, bring references, cite references here from Muslim websites where they are saying they are authentic. You can link your references here. I linked my reference for about Quranic manuscripts, right? So you can link those references here, and then we can check them out. And by the way, I can guarantee most, if not all, of his references are not sahih. In fact, if they turn out to be sahih, right, most of his references turn out to be sahih, I'll stop using the historical Jesus arguments. I'll stop using those arguments if these clowns, those references turn out to be authentic, because I can guarantee they are not. He needs to give references. He needs to show their authorities grade those narrations sahih. Unless he does that, I'm not going to take his claim seriously. Now, again, the point about Ibn Masud, right? He said, I lied that he said all those surahs are in the Quran, right? This is him lying, because I never said that all 114 surahs are written in the Musaf. This is what he said that I said, but this is a lie. I never said that. I said he accepted those 114 surahs, all of them in the Quran, and I gave reasons for that, namely the mutawatir qira'at and the fact that despite when he said, Ibn Masud radiallahu anhu said, as I think it's recorded in Tafsir Qurtubi, that if I wrote Surah Fatiha in the Quran, I would have written it behind every surah. So again, address the arguments I'm making, address my point about criteria, address my point about structural coherence, address what Theodore Noldeke said, that no companion disagreed with the Uthmani Quran. Again, why are you whining? As for the issue of Ibn Masud radiallahu anhu disagreeing with Uthman radiallahu anhu, the reason he was disagreeing was because he was excluded from the process of Uthmanic recension. In fact, in that recension, Hazrat Ubay bin Ka'b radiallahu anhu was involved. So, why is he whining about all these points, and why is he not addressing the points I'm making? Uh, I think I have about 2 minutes left, but he didn't address any of the points I'm making. So, I'm hoping that this clown at least addresses the points I made. till now. He can start this time now.
Okay, so not only is he insulting me, basically he doesn't have any arguments, and I just gave AK to give the reference. But here's what's interesting: you lied that Ibn Masud had nothing to do with the recension of the Quran for Uthman al-Alfan. But you forgot what I just gave you, right? I just gave you a citation to repeat, right? This is again coming from Al-Jama Al-Zadawi, volume 7, page number 304, in a tradition number 115562, wherein I quote, Abdullah Rahman ibn Zayd said, Abdullah ibn Masud used to erase the al-mutawatin. Which mutawatin is he talking about? Chapter 113 and chapter 114 from his copies of the Quran, and he used to say, this is not from Allah's book. This is not. We're going to see how you're going to run when you come to the cross-examination, brother, because I'm going to force you. Notice, he's attacking the credibility of the sources I'm giving him. But he didn't hear the sources I'm giving him, right? This is Al-Jaladin, Al-Sayuti, right? Al-Iqtan fil Mu'al Quran, right? Volume number 2, page number 25. But notice this. I even mentioned that this also appears in Abu Ubaid ibn Ka'b, Fidal al-Quran, Fidal al-Quran by Qasim ibn Salim. I have an isnad with me, brother. So appealing to saying, well, the sources is giving me is false. Well, you have to prove to me, because I'm not gathering this from Bart Ehrman or any of your modern scholars. These are coming from your sources, right? Now he's questioning me about criteria. Well, there's no criteria set to which we can know that the Quran is perfectly preserved. The only criteria that exists is in his own Quran, where it states that if this book was none other than from Allah, you would find many contradictions, which I will be more than happy to give him in my cross-examination. Let us see how he's going to handle those points. Again, he didn't hear the sources I was citing. I said it's Sahih al-Bukhari, right? And I have with me Ibn Sa'd's Tabaq al-Kubra, volume 8, page number 271. I have Ibn Majah, Sunan Ibn Majah, right? Volume 3, page, hadith number, book 9, hadith number 19444. Where here, even the mother of the believer says that there were verses that existed. Those verses had to do with what I quoted about Umar ibn al-Khattab, which is also cited in Ibn Ishaq's biography, right? By Ibn Ishaq, page number 648, and it also appears in Musnad Ahmad. Notice, Musnad Ahmad, for some reason, is an Israeli. But let us see the holes in the narrative. Volume number 302, book 2, hadith number 208, where it states clearly that those verses of stoning for adultery did exist in the Quran and they were practiced. And Aisha in Sahih al-Bukhari, she tells us that the page was with her, what, when they were preoccupied with the death of your prophet, and a tame sheep came and ate them. Oh, I thought Muslims did know the Quran by virtue of memory recitation. Where are those verses in the Quran for stoning for adultery, Mr. Muhammad? Right? Furthermore, I just got done telling you, none of you, you, Muhammad, not even AK, not even Nazim or any Muslim ever claimed to have the entire perfect Quran. How do you know what was in there when much of it was lost? This is again coming from Al-Sayuti, right? Say you have whatever has survived, but you're arguing that your Quran has been perfectly preserved, right? The reason why you didn't even elapse your 2 minutes is because you've got no argument. I gave you, right? Ibn Masud. Not even that. I also gave you from Tafsir Dur. I'll give you from Tafsir Al-Dur, Manthar, volume 3, page number 208. Yes, Abdullah ibn Ka'b had 114 chapters in his Mus'haf, in his Quran, but Abdullah ibn Masud, which your prophet take from 4, and he
111.
mentions the 2, he had 111 chapters. And the reason why he didn't include chapter 1, Surah Al-Fatiha, is because of what the Quran says. And I'll give you the reference because it also appears in the Quran in chapter 87, if I'm not mistaken. But I'll give you the reference where it says that the 7 recitations were given But it was also given along with the Quran. And I'll show you from Jalalain that in that tafsir, yes, those verses are Surah Al-Fatiha, which your companion says they were not part of the Quran. Talk about perfect preservation, brother. And you didn't answer my challenge to the abrogated 200 verses in Surah Al-Azab. Where are those verses? Your mic.
Uh,
Timing.
Before we start the 10 minutes, right? Just ask him to upload his references here because I read this reference, the one on Dora, right? That's linked right now. The reference he's using, ask him to link those here.
Yeah, cool. Can you send me your references, please? I was gonna ask that because you
No
did say a lot
problem,
of
brother.
them.
I'll back because I have them in soft copy and I have them in hard copy too. So I'll give you everything that I said. Just demand for it, and I'll give it to you. No problem.
I am demanding
We're
for it.
demanding for it now, bro.
What?
He's demanding for it right now, bro.
No problem. Here we go. Here we go.
Wait, let me know when your boy's ready for the cross examination. You got 10 minutes
Yeah,
on that, bro.
I
No,
think in
no
the first 10
problem.
minutes, I will be cross examined by him. Then in the next 10 minutes, he will be cross examined by me. So,
No, I did the finish part, so you get to cross examine it. So here's AK. I'm giving all the
no,
references
you
in the
can
chat,
cross
guys.
examine
If
me
you can
first.
refrain, hold on, guys.
That's
If you
how
can
it goes.
refrain from posting it,
First the
hold
debate
on,
is
brother.
cross examined
If
first.
you can,
I am
hold on,
talking,
brother.
so when I'm talking, keep
If
your
they can
mouth shut.
refrain from
The
commenting in
person
the
who
chat, so that
debates
the
first,
brother
right?
can see the
The person who
references
has
I
the
was
first
citing,
opening
I'll be
statement,
more than
he
happy.
is cross
Here we go.
examined first. So
Oh,
shut
Muhammad,
your
what we
cake
do?
hole and start the cross examination.
Let him put his references in,
I'm
and
putting
then
all the reference. Guys, can you please not comment in the chat so that I can post all the references? Since he says he wants all the references, and I have them in front of me. Let us see how best he would do. All
and then
right, let's
once
see.
you both are
Here we go.
ready, we'll start the
By
cross
the way, the
examination.
references that is posted right now, is it one of yours or AK's?
Nah,
Whose
that's one of
reference is it? It's
course.
not mine.
I'm
That's course.
posting the references in the chat for everybody to look up and read that I'm not lying about anything I said about all the sources I was citing, because these
The
sources
reference you are going to
are
cross
coming from
examine me
your
on, right?
source, from your books.
Okay,
Here
You
we
guys,
go.
we
will
don't need
have
a
to post
commentary. We don't
those
need
in the
commentary
pin
on that,
link
bro.
because the reference you are going to use, you have to
Brother,
post it in the pin
unlike
link.
So guys,
you,
guys,
I
guys,
did my
guys, relax,
study
relax.
and I got those references from your books, right? I didn't go
Okay,
to a website, neither did I go to anything. These are from your books.
okay, let's
Your
clarify. Let's
books.
clarify one second. This link
No,
on the top. This is
I won't
Cole
take
told me to
your
put
word
this
on
up.
my books. So any reference you are going to use, you'll have to post it here.
Brother, they're in the chat.
Post it in the pin link.
They're in the chat. It's a book. I'm giving you the reference, brother. I post a physical book in the chat.
I think he's saying if you have like the digital version of it, if you can show that as well, that would be more efficient.
Brother, I have the references in front of him. He can look them up,
I know, and you
right?
have a
That's why
habit
it's a
about
debate.
lying
He has
about
to be
references. This
prepared.
is why I'll have
He
you
has to
post
be
the references
Yeah,
prepared.
here.
but bro, like as the thing is you're presenting them, so you have to present them to the fullest extent, right?
Here we go. I'm posting them in the chat. It's in the chat. How much clearer can I become? Can I get when I'm posting references in the chat, brother?
Yeah.
You
It's
can
in the
post it in the
chat.
pin link.
What else am I
That
gonna
is how
do,
you can get more clearer.
Oh my gosh.
brother? There, it's a
AK,
book.
make
Do
this
you
clown the
know or
moderator.
understand what a book is?
AK, make this clown the
See,
moderator.
he's trying
So
to
you can
evade.
post the
Now
references
he's
here.
trying.
He's not.
This
He
this
hasn't
this
got. He hasn't
guy
got the
has
links. He
been
hasn't got the links.
singing,
That's. I don't want to post them. Go. Just one
saying to
second.
us,
Just one
"We are
second.
running away from
One second.
debates." Here we
I
go.
want to stay. I
The
think up to
reference
like
is in
2 seconds.
front
You
of
are
you.
in the link, and I dare you to
Oh
post
my
your
god.
back channel.
The
Alright, guys.
reference is in
That
front of
reference
you.
One sec.
can
One sec.
come.
Boys, I want to mute you both. Yeah. Just please do not come off mute, man. I don't like doing this. I would prefer you did it yourselves. But look, right. Call right. I also clarify what he's asking from you. He's basically saying that these references that you're providing, because you said in the debate that these are all have been graded as authentic in the books. He's just asking, and you might not have that now right now. That's fine. You might just have like the page number because you looked them up like physically. But if you have the digital copies where it goes directly to the page, like you have on, like you said, this top one, if you have them for the other ones, if you can post them, that will be more efficient. If you don't, then it is what it is then at that point. But that's what Muhammad asking you for. He's not saying you're not posting the references. Obviously, everyone can see you put the page numbers in. He just wants a digital, like straight, like URL link, right? And then if we can, if you haven't got that, then we'll just go to the what do you call it? The 10-minute cross examination. We'll start with Muhammad cross examining you first, and then you secondly
No,
doing
actually,
the.
he will cross-examine me first. AK, that's how the format goes. The person who does the first opening statement, he is cross-examined first. That is
No
how this
problem.
always
No problem. We'll
happens.
do that.
So he will cross-examine me first.
Go ahead, Cold. When you're ready. All of the spotlights on you.
Okay, so now notice this. So let me
Should
ask
I
him the
start the
question,
timer?
right?
Do you want to start the timer?
Yeah, start the time.
All right, 10
Start
minutes.
time.
Yeah.
So Muhammad, are you familiar with Abdullah ibn Masud and the companions of Abu Dhar when they came to the Prophet? Are you familiar with that
I'm
narration?
familiar with those companions, but you will have to give the specific narration
Okay,
to
so
ask if
here's a
I'm familiar
specific
with it or
narration.
not.
This is Sahih Bukhari, Sahih al-Bukhari, volume 6, book
Link
number
it.
60, hadith number, I'm reading from my notes. What's wrong with you?
Link it.
Hadith
I
number
won't take your word on it.
4.
You were lying before. Link
Is
it.
this how
Link on
cross-examination
sunnah.com.
happens, brother? President?
Call to
AK,
serve.
can you
You
please
have to link
moderate
a
it?
reference.
Post my
Emre.
time,
I
and
won't
can you,
take your word on it.
AK, can you please
Sahih
post my
Bukhari
time
is
so we can have
translated.
some order?
Link
Yeah,
sunnah.com
it's post. It's
reference.
post.
Okay, AK, he's still not getting it. I have my notes with me.
No,
How do
no,
you
don't
post
lie.
this
Post the
paper?
reference.
I will give you the references. You can note them
Post
down.
them.
You can look
I
them
won't
up.
take your word on it.
Sunnah.com.
Post the references.
Abdul, you're
Post the
trying to run
references.
from cross examination right here. Let me cross
No,
Okay,
I'm
examine you.
stopping you from
guys. Yeah,
lying. Post the
guys, guys,
references,
guys,
clown.
You
Like
see
I
that?
said,
guys, guys.
post
I'll
the
post timer. I'll
references.
post timer. I'll post timer. Right. Look, Muhammad. Guys, listen to what each other are saying. When Muhammad's asking for a reference, he wants it like the direct, the thing, like how like how you presented this top link. He wants that for all of them. Obviously, if it's on
AK,
your
he
picture,
has
yeah,
Sahih Bukhari. You can open
one sec.
Sahih Bukhari in the reference.
One sec.
You have
Once
Sahih
you're saying
Bukhari as well.
you're saying it's
Post
on
the
your piece of
reference.
paper, but
It's
that doesn't help
translated,
us, bro.
right?
That doesn't
Both
help
of
it.
us
Doesn't
can
help
read
anyone.
English.
Anyways, I will continue the time. Muhammad's asking you for the story that you mentioned. If you can have if you can show the like, because you said you search on sunnah.com, but that's kind of your job because you're presenting it, not Muhammad's job. You
Brother,
can.
I have the reference,
He
book
can take
number,
2 minutes.
page number, hadith number, volume number. He
No,
can
no
challenge me
challenging.
on that in his own
Bring it
time
from
if
the
he wants
Quran
to, but
or
he's not gonna eat up my
bring
time.
it from a
Muhammad,
reliable.
ya akhi, ya akhi.
Guys, yeah. Think technically it's cross examination, yeah. So you kind of free for all that.
Yeah. So let me.
I'm starting
Why
at
is he
10
running?
probably. So
Yeah.
it's on
Any
So
Muslim
if he
source.
wants to
9:15.
challenge me on
We're
the
going on.
references, he can
Carrying
do it
on.
in his own time. But let me at least cross-examine him. Right. Sahih al-Bukhari, volume 6, book 60, hadith number 468, and it also appears in Sahih al-Muslim, book 4, right? Hadith number 1799 to 1802. It says there, in reference to Quran chapter 92, verse 3, these are the companions. Now notice, Muhammad, I'm going to ask you the question here. These are the companions of Abdullah ibn Masud who came to Abu Darda, right? And I quote, it says here, right? Narrated Ibrahim, the companions of Abdullah ibn Masud came to Abu Darda before they arrived to his home. He looked for them and found them. Then he asked them, who among you can recite Quran? As Abdullah ibn Masud recited. They replied, all of us. He's asked, who among you, right, knows it by heart? They appointed Al Ahman. Yeah. Then he says, they asked Akhma, if that's how you pronounce it. How do you hear it? Now, notice the quote, and I'm going to ask you the question. By the male and the female, which is Quran chapter 2, verse 3, Abu Darda said, I testify I have heard the Prophet reciting it likewise, but these people want me to recite it, and by him who created male and female. So there is a dispute between Abdullah ibn Masud and Abu Dar in regards to Quran chapter 92 verse 3. Now, question. Which one is the correct recitation? By the male and the female, or by him who created the male and the female? Chapter 2 verse 3. Go ahead.
Okay, both are correct. Both are among the two of the seven Ahruf of the Quran. What's the issue here?
Uh, all right. So, guys, notice he just affirms. Now, can you show me which one appears in the Quran?
If I'm not wrong, I think both are among the 10 Qiraat.
Can you show me
Or only one of them.
which Qiraat has by him who created male and female?
Well, if it's not, then it's one of the Ahruf that were basically left out of the Uthmanic recension. What's the issue here?
Okay, now in regards to Surat Al-Azab, ayah 33, can you please provide for me the abrogated, the mansukh, sorry, not mansukh, yeah, mansukh, which verses abrogated the 200 verses of Surat Al-Azab?
Can you repeat the earlier point? I didn't get it. My phone internet
Can you
connection cut
give
out for around
me,
10 seconds.
right, I'll clarify. In light with chapter 2, verse 106, can you please provide for me the verses that abrogated Surah Al-Azab, the 200 verses that are missing from your Quran?
Firstly, those 200 verses are not missing, they were abrogated. As for which specific verses abrogated them, I don't know about that.
Which
Why
surahs
do
abrogated
we
them?
need to preserve that
Which
abrogation?
surah abrogated them? Which surahs? Can you name them?
Why do we need to preserve that? Your question assumes that we need to preserve
Brother,
that for perfect
brother,
preservation.
because the
First,
Quran is
answer
explicit.
the
I'll answer in your time. Your Quran is explicit in chapter 2, verse 106, that Allah says if we cause a verse to be forgotten or abrogated, we will bring something similar or better. Now, nusikh al-mansukh, do you know how it functions?
Yeah, I know how it functions.
So you have the abrogated and the abrogated, correct?
Correct.
So which ones abrogated the 200 verses of Surah Al-Azab?
Why do we need to preserve that information? Again,
I
if you're
didn't
going to
ask you
make
to
a
preserve them. I asked you which surahs in the Quran that you have today abrogated the 200 verses of Surah Al-Azab.
and assume that we need to preserve those verses and we need to preserve
I'm not
the
asking about
abrogated verses,
preservation. I'm asking you to give me the
prove that
surahs.
criteria.
Brother, give me the surahs that mansukh all the 200 verses in Surah Al-Azab.
Again, if you are going to make up a criteria, you need to prove it. You are assuming that we need to have those 200 ayat
Okay, so
preserved
you're not going to
and
answer.
the
All right,
specific
okay, no
information
problem.
with specific ayat abrogated those preserved. Prove this criteria.
Okay, no problem. No problem. Can you recite for me from Surah Al-Hadaf from Abdullah ibn uh, um, from Ubay bin Ka'b's Quran? Can you recite for me any verse, any verse in chapter 116?
I don't currently have that specific Ubay bin Ka'b radiyallahu
Why
anhu's
is it not in your Quran?
Quran.
Why is it not in your
Why does
Quran?
it need to be preserved? If you are going to make up a criteria,
I'm
you need to
asking
prove
you,
it.
was it
I
revealed
am
by the
addressing your
Prophet?
point.
Was it revealed
Call
by
to
the
stop.
Prophet?
You can ask a question, but when I answer, you need to shut your mouth. Now, the assumption in all of this is that all the ayat, every single ayat of every single ahruf needs to be preserved for Quran preservation, right? This criteria is simply refuted by Quran 2106. Read it. Allah says himself that he causes some ayat to be forgotten. So the Islamic criteria specifically denies that every single ayat needs to be preserved. If that's the case, right? His whining about Ubay bin Ka'b radiallahu anhu's Musaf is what is his whining doesn't count because again that goes against the Islamic criteria. So do you have
All right.
another
Okay.
response?
Yeah, that's sufficient. Are you familiar with Surah Al-Falaq and Al-Nas?
It's Surah Falak and Surah Nas.
Are you
I don't think
familiar?
you speak Arabic otherwise because your pronunciation is really bad.
Are you familiar with them? Yes or no?
Yes, I am familiar with them.
Why did Abdullah ibn Masud reject these two surahs, which are repentance, seeking
Where
refuge?
did he
Sorry.
reject these surahs? Just because he didn't write them in the Quran, that does not mean he rejected them. In fact, in Tafsir Qurtubi, right? I'll just link the reference here. This is in the video description from Ali Atai's presentation, right? He gave specific reference where Ibn Masud Raziallahu anhu said, if I was to write Surah Fatiha in the Quran, I would have written it with
I'm
each
not
surah.
asking you about Surah
So
Al-Fatiha. I am not
I
asking
am
you about
addressing your
Surah
point.
Al-Fatiha.
Call to sub.
I'll
I am
come to Surah
addressing
Al-Fatiha
your
later
point.
on.
I am simply showing that
You're
just because
wasting my
Ibn Masud
time.
Raziallahu anhu did not write, I am not a liar unlike you. So shut your mouth when
Brother,
I'm speaking. right?
please,
Ibn Masud
Muhammad,
Raziallahu
be
anhu said,
respectful.
"Call to
Be
son, you don't
respectful.
deserve
Hold
to
on,
son."
I've got more
Now
questions
let me
here.
get my point. Let me answer the question you brought up, right? You said that just because Ibn Masud Raziallahu anhu did not have both of those surahs written in the Quran, right? That means he believes these are not part of the Quran. But this
I
is
didn't
false
ask that.
because
You're answering something I never. Why did he
you said
reject the two surahs? Why did he reject them? Let me read for you the quotation again.
where did he
Here
reject
it's
them?
coming from Al-Mjama Al-Wazadawi, volume 7, page number 311. It says, Abdullah Rahman
Link it here.
ibn
It's
Zayd
great.
said, hold on.
Link it here.
Abdullah ibn Masud
Link
used to
it here.
erase
You are not taking it
al-muwatatan.
seriously. Link the reference here.
I'll give you a reference. Okay, let's carry on. Let's carry on. Can you please explain to me in Tafsir
Your time has
al-Badawi,
come up, but
right?
I'm giving you three
Hold on,
minutes.
brother. Hold on, brother.
I'm
Brother,
giving you
please.
3 more minutes now. Because your time got wasted, right? I'm
Tafsir,
giving you three
okay.
more
You're
minutes.
wasting my time. You're wasting my time. You're not
I'm
answering
giving you
nothing.
3 more minutes
Tafsir
daily.
al-Baghawi. Tafsir al-Baghawi, quoting chapter 4, verse 162, where the mother of the believers, and I have the isnad with
One
me,
minute,
right?
boys.
Uh, Here you have the mother of the believers, Aisha, and the son of Uthman, Aban, saying that in Surah Al-Ma'idah, إن الذين آمنوا والآمنوا إن الذين آمنوا والآمنوا الوسابيون. She says it's an error in the Quran. Why did Uthman leave that error in the Quran if he had perfect preservation? Hello, Abdul.
As for the
Guys, can you
companions,
hear me?
agreeing
Okay.
or disagreeing, let me answer the question called to serve. As for the companions,
You went
agreeing or
quiet.
disagreeing on the Uthmanic Musaf, right? Don't take my word, don't take this clown's word. Listen to what your own scholars, Theodore Nolde actually says. No companions disagreed with the Uthmanic Musaf, maybe with the exception of Ibn Masud, but later he even agreed with that. This is not me saying this. This is not some Muslim scholar saying this. This is a non-Muslim scholar, Theodore Nolde. He's saying the companions did not disagree on the Uthmanic Quran. So again, I mean,
All right.
Christians are being
Okay.
refuted by
Okay, no
arguments.
That's
problem.
This is
time,
how
bro. That's
pathetic
time.
their position is.
Let me no. It's wasting my. Let me ask one more question, then
No,
he
no,
can
that's
have his
time.
time.
That's time. That's time. I gave you extra time as well. Um, guys, right? So go on, Muhammad, bro. It's your
He
time
can
to
have one
proceed.
more minute.
You sure? Go for it, bro.
Yeah.
Okay. So one more question, then he can have it. Okay. So Muhammad in Sahih Muslim, and actually I have got three references with me right now. It says Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, reported that it had been revealed in the Holy Quran. Notice, revealed in the Holy Quran that 10 clear sucklings make marriage unlawful. Then it was mansukh, abrogated, right? Substituted by 5 sucklings, and Allah's apostle, may he be pleased, died. It was before that time found in the Quran, and Muslims used to recite it. Where is the verse of suckling 5 times in the Quran?
It was abrogated.
It was abrogated by the 10 from 10 to 5. Where is the five
Yeah.
times?
And the 5 one was also abrogated. I
Can
can
you
link
give
the
me the reference
exact
that tells
reference.
that 5 was abrogated?
I can give you the ayat which abrogated it.
Show me, name me the ayah, then you can have your time, your turn. Where is the
I
ayah?
think it's in Surah 24. I link the reference in my closing statement. I don't have it now, but I link it in the closing statements.
All right, go ahead.
So, okay. Give me a moment. I'll start my 10 minutes. Okay, I'm starting my 10 minutes now, right? You made the entire whining about how every single words needs to be present, right? You're making a criteria that for Quran to be perfectly preserved, every single ayat, that even those that are abrogated need to be preserved. Where are you getting this criteria from?
I never stated that criteria. You just put that in my mouth.
Of
I never
course you
said
are.
that.
Then why were you demanding the abrogated ayat?
I didn't ask. I didn't demand for any abrogated ayat. I told you to show me ayats that abrogate the abrogated.
You did demand the abrogated ayat. You demanded the
I
200
didn't. No,
ayat from Surah
you
Ahzab
misheard
that
me.
were abrogated.
Okay, you agreed with me that you are familiar with mansukh al nasakh al mansukh, and it says that if there are verses that abrogate other verses, you have a nusikhat verse that mansukh another verse. So I was just asking you which verse abrogated other verses, not that you should give me abrogated verses.
Hello, I can't hear you.
Can you guys hear me? AK, can you hear me? Pause this time if you can.
Could you just repeat that pause time?
Yeah, okay. So my response was I did not demand for abrogated verses. I demanded for abrogators, right? Nusikh. I didn't ask for mansukh. No, I asked for nusikh verses, those that abrogate the previous verses. That's what I demanded from you.
God,
Since you
to
agreed
show
with
the
me that you're
abrogated
familiar
verses.
with nusikh al mansukh, go ahead.
Okay, just let me clarify, right? Just let me clarify. You are saying that you agree with me that we don't need to have the abrogated verses preserved for Quran to be perfectly preserved. So you are
I
agreeing
didn't
with this
agree with
point.
you. I didn't agree. You missed my point again. Because in chapter 2, verse 106, it's very explicit that if Allah causes verses to be forgotten or abrogated,
So wait
He
a
will
minute.
bring something
What's the
similar
criteria for
or
preservation
better.
here? Call to sub. What's
Wh-
the
wh-
criteria for preservation here?
Your Quran, chapter 2, verse 106.
Yeah. Okay. How does that prove your criteria?
It's
Go
not,
and read
I don't
Quran.
have the
If your faith
criteria.
does
I
not
didn't
say,
set any criteria, brother. I didn't set any criteria. I'm
so
arguing from the
accept you one.
negative point that your Quran is not perfectly preserved.
You, based on which criteria? You are setting a criteria here. So again, I am
Brother,
asking, what are you basing your
from the
criteria on?
Islamic criteria, from the Quran, that it says, if this was none other than from Allah, you will find in it much abrogation or inconsistencies.
No,
Do
not
you have the problem with that?
contradictions. Again, that ayat is not about Quran preservation. So why are you changing the entire
Okay,
topic? That ayat
okay,
is about
your
contradictions.
Quran says that Allah will preserve His Quran, and you will not disagree with me that your Quran says Allah will protect it and guide it. So I'm basing off this
Allah will
statement
preserve
and
it.
arguing
Allah will
from
not guide
historical
the Quran.
facts.
Allah will preserve the Quran. Do you think if before even speaking again, you are talking about the point about contradictions, right? You are saying that we are talking about preservation here. These are different topics. So why are you changing the topics?
I'm not changing anything. Are you even listening to yourself when you're asking me these questions?
Are you listening to what I am saying? We are talking about preservation, then you want to jump to contradictions. Again, why are you changing the topic and wasting both
You
our times?
asked me on which
I've asked you
criteria,
one
even
question.
though I told you several times that I did not place any criteria. What I'm
Okay,
arguing
wait
is
a minute.
based on
If you
facts that
successfully
exist in
claim,
your Islamic
call to
traditions.
sir, you don't have a criteria based on which to judge whether Quran is preserved or not. How can you say whether Quran is
I did
preserved or not
not
if you don't have a
state a
criteria regarding this?
criteria. How many times am I going to
If
say
you
this?
don't have a
I did
criteria,
not
how
set
can you
any
say Quran is
criteria.
preserved or not
I'm
preserved?
arguing from historical
Call
records
to sir.
on the Quran. Are you not hearing?
Call to sir. If you don't have a criteria, right? How can you judge
I
whether
did
Quran is
not
preserved
set
or
any
not preserved?
criteria. Does the Quran give a criteria
If you
on
don't set
prophet
any
preservation?
criteria,
Maybe I should
Saturiklam,
pose the question to you.
if you don't have a criteria, right, how can you judge whether Quran is preserved or not
I
preserved?
don't need a
What are you
criteria.
basing
What
your
I
judgment
need
on?
is to look at the historical sources and what they tell us about your Quran.
So you have no criteria. So you have no
I
basis to
don't
judge whether
need a
Quran is preserved or
criteria.
not preserved. Of course you do. I mean, what kind of nonsense is this? How can you know something if you don't have any basis to know it?
Your
Think about
scholars
it. You
know
are
a thing or two than me, brother. Your scholars.
my scholars shed your religion, which is why you have to lie about them. Now, just you're not going to answer the point about criteria. I just want the people to realize this point.
I
He's saying
answered three
Quran is not
times,
preserved.
brother. Three times. Go ahead. Go
People,
ahead.
just think about this. He's saying Quran is not preserved. I'm asking him based on what criteria. He says, I don't have a criteria. If he doesn't have a criteria,
Historical
right?
records,
How
brother.
can you say
Historical
whether
records.
Quran is preserved or not preserved? Now, I asked you
Yeah,
multiple
according
times,
to your
what's
history,
the
it's not
historical
preserved.
record? Wait a minute, call to
According to
serve. What criteria based on
you're
historical
making
records? Give
statements.
me a
You're
criteria
making
based on
statements. You're
historical
not asking
records.
me questions, bro. You're making statements.
I'm asking you a question, right? Please give me the criteria based on historical records that you are claiming disproves Quran preservation. Give
I
me that
just told
criteria.
you. I just told you.
Go
You are
on.
the one who's setting up. Hold on. You Muslims sing to us day in day out that the Quran is preserved. Now, what I had to do was go to history books in your
Now
books, and then I find
we are
that there are many
discussing the
issues in
Islamic
here.
claim based on the
I don't
Islamic
need a
criteria.
criteria because the Quran does not have a criteria by which I can place it and
Of
compare it
course
with
it does.
itself.
Of course it does. It's the Osmanic Quran. Quran tells us to follow the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi
Are you
wasallam and
asking me about
companions.
the same
If
Quran
they
that
have
Aisha says
the
that's full of
Osmanic
errors
Quran.
and Uthman admitting himself?
If you're gonna bring up fabricated narrations, that isn't really going to refute
Fabricated.
Islam. It
It
won't
is
save your religion
fabricated. No,
either.
guys, Tafsir
Why are you
al-Badawi
lying
is
all the time?
fabricated.
Call to serve. Link the references here again, as I said. Link the
I
references here.
will. You
Otherwise,
can,
stop
you can,
lying.
you can, you can challenge me on that. No problem. I have them in soft copy,
Okay,
and
link
I
the
was
references
posting them
here.
in the chat. But you don't, for some reason, you didn't want me to post them.
When did I
You're
say I
wasting
don't
your
want to
time.
post them? I said
Ask
post
your
them if you're
questions,
paying them.
Mohammed. Ask your questions, Mohammed.
I did ask them. You are making false claims again and again. I am going to ask you to prove them. Now, you have clearly, you're not going to admit to the point about criteria, right? Now, I made an argument from structural coherence of the Quran, from Quran preservation. Address that point. Address the argument.
What preservation? You cannot even provide for me this 200 verses from Surah Al-Azab. What preservation are you talking
Okay,
about?
so
You,
for
you know,
Quran
let me finish. Let me
preservation,
finish.
you need
Let
to
me
have
finish
200
answering.
verses from Surah
Let me
Al-Azam.
finish
Call to sir.
answering.
Why
Let me
were
finish
you lying
answering.
before?
Here's
First, let me
Kitab
finish
al
asking the question. Call to sir.
Mus'haf.
You said earlier that
Brother.
you don't
Let me
need to
answer.
have
Let me
200
answer.
ayat from Al-Azam that
Let
were
me
abrogated,
answer.
right?
Let me
You
answer.
said
I'm
that
not
earlier.
talking
Now
about
you are saying you need to
abrogation.
have those ayat. Go on, answer. Answer me. First, you said you
I
don't need to have those ayat. Now you are saying we need to
You
have
are
those ayat. Go on,
strawmanning my
answer me.
position. You're strawmanning. I didn't ask you to provide me with abrogated verses. I just asked you to point out which verses abrogated the abrogated verses. Why are you strawmanning my position, bro?
Now, I don't need to strawman your position. You said here you don't even have the 200 verses. So again, the replay is being recorded. Now, as for the point about which verses abrogated those 200 verses, right? Why do we need to have the
That's
record
my
of which verses specifically abrogated those verses? Again, if you're
That's
going to
my
make up a
question to
criteria,
you.
you need to prove it.
I don't need to point out those verses. Number one, I don't even care about the Quran to begin with. Your sources say
Whether you
200 verses.
can't lie
Muhammad.
about it again and again.
Hold on. Your source here, and I have Isnad with me, say that there are errors
You have
and
your
Surah Al-Ahzab was
you don't
equal
have an
to Surah
isnad.
Al-Baqarah.
Right now, for to serve you have nothing. Now, I'm bored with this
وقال
whining about
أبو
Islam,
عبيد
right?
وقال
You are
الحجاج
not
وقال
able to
هارون
defend
بن موسى
anything.
وقال الزبير
For
بن كراهة.
call
What
to
do you mean I
serve.
don't have
Address
Isnad?
my point about structural coherence of the Quran that non-Muslim and Muslim scholars agree on. Address my
Which
point about
Muslim
why
scholars?
about this.
Is
Uh,
Abdullah ibn Masud is Abdullah ibn Masud and Al Sayyuti Muslim scholars? They disagree with you. They say you as
uh,
Abdul
they
should
don't
not even
disagree
Bro,
claim
with
to
one
say
me.
you
minute,
have the
guys.
Call
entire
to
Quran.
serve. You can lie about my scholars, right? But your lying won't change my scholars' position. So, address my point about structural coherence of the Quran. If those long surahs are structurally coherent despite abrogations, right? How can this is a clear-cut proof for preservation? How can it not be? Again, these are
Brother,
long
brother,
surahs, right?
brother, brother,
That are revealed at
brother.
different times and
Listen,
places. Call to
Al
serve.
Baladin,
Shut up
Abdul
when I'm
Al
asking the
Rahman,
question.
Abu Bakr Al
Address the point
Sayyuti,
I'm making.
Fitan fi Ulum wa Quran. Here we go.
Wait, let
Page
me show
volume
you
2,
ayat represent.
page number 25. Page number 20. Abdullah ibn al
Does it
Umar
not
reported and
represent
said,
the coherence
let
of the
none of
Quran?
you say I
Call
have
to serve.
acquired the whole Quran. How does he know what of it is when much of the Quran has
Call
disappeared?
to serve.
Let him say, I have got what has survived.
When are you going to
Abu
respond to
Ubaid
my
ibn Ka'b,
arguments?
without Al
I
Guys,
said
Quran.
guys,
this
let's
enough,
conclude on this one.
but
What's the format again, bro?
Closing statements.
What's
If you want to
next?
finish
Closing
off for
arguments?
this point that you're talking about, that's fine. And Then we'll just move on to
Yeah,
clips.
let me answer this. Let me let me answer this. Here, Al Jalaluddin, Abdullah Rahman, right? Abu Bakr Al Sayyuti,
Okay, where does he
Al
talk about structure of the Quran? Answer the
Al
question
fil
I'm
ulum
making.
Quran.
You haven't addressed once the point about structure of the Quran. Address this point. Why are you lying about this again and again?
All
Address the
right,
argument
okay.
about
Let's
structure of the
bring it to
Quran.
closing. Okay, it's just gonna go somewhere. All right.
Okay, guys. Who started? Muhammad started, bro.
Okay, I
Muhammad
start
started.
because it was his
Ready?
last. So I do the closing statements, and then we can close it out.
Alright, guys.
All
Happy
right,
to move on to closing statements. If you got it out your
5 minutes,
system,
5 minutes,
go on.
5 minutes, 5 minutes. Right.
Let me know when you want to start.
Okay. All right. So it is very clear that Muhammad has no argument, even though he's been whining. I'm gonna use the word he has been using on me to actually debate him, Quranic preservation, right? And we'll see what's gonna be worse when debate next week. Debate's topic is Muhammad prophesied in the Bible, because there I'm gonna nail him just like I nailed him in Quranic preservation. Now notice the point that I just brought up, guys. Right? I didn't cite any scholar outside the Islamic foundation, outside the Islamic world. I cited scholars from his own sources, from his own books, scholars that have isnad, scholars that are backed up by other scholars. So I pointed out that Muslims have no basis by which they can claim that they have the entirety of the Quran as was revealed by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Man, I like saying that, right? Because you have scholars like Al Sayyuti, you have Ubay ibn Ka'b, right? You have scholars like Abdullah ibn Masud, you have scholars like Ubay ibn Ka'b who had verses that do not appear in the Quran that they have today. Surahs 115 and 116, which were not part of the Quran, as said by who? Not me, not called to serve, not an atheist, not even Bat Ehrman, but said by Abdullah ibn Masud. And I quote, right? Here, it says here, Jama al Zawidi, volume 7, page number 311. It says here, Abdul Rahman ibn Zayed said, Abdullah ibn Masud used to erase al Mutawatin, seeking refuge, meaning chapter 113 to 114. Why? From his copies, which he never gave to Abdullah Uthman ibn Affan, because according to the Prophet said, if you want to learn Quran, take from four. Nobody knew better the Quran than Abdullah ibn Masud, and I'll give you the reference to prove my point. And it says here, it is not part of the book of Allah. That is why the Musaf of Ibn Masud never contained chapter 113 and chapter 114, Al Falaq, right? And Al Nas. Now, let me read for you from Takhrij Al Musnad by Al Shuaib, page number 2494. It is graded, brother, Sahih. And I have the reference which I gave the brother AK to pin on top. And this is also cited by Nisai, Al Nisai, right? And it's also in his Sunnah, Al Sunnah Al Kubra, volume number 799, and Imam Ahmad in 2494. And it says here, Ibn Abbas sing order the two companions, Abdullah ibn Masud and Zayd ibn Thabit, because they were among those who compiled the Quran before Muhammad's death, and Muhammad revealed the Quran as based of what Jibril said, and he brought every year, right? Now notice what it says here. He revealed what Jibril sent down. The last recitation was Abdullah ibn Masud's recitation. Abdullah ibn Masud witnessed the last recitation and he took it from the Prophet. So I don't fault Ibn Masud when he says, no, Ubay ibn Ka'b, your Quran is a false Quran, because I got my Quran from the Prophet. Takjir al-Musnad by Shuwaib, page number 249, cited in Al-Nisai, also in Imam Ahmad, right? So this gentleman here failed to present a convincing argument to demonstrate that his perfect Quran has been preserved from the time when it was revealed by the angel Jibreel alayhi salam to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Why? Because we know, according to even the mother of the believers, even from the statement of Uthman ibn Affan, right? And I have Waqala Abu Ubaid, Waqala al-Lajjaj, Waqala Harun ibn Musa, Waqala al-Zubayr ibn
One more, bro.
Khair. Yeah, it says here, and I quote, right? And this is coming from, I'll give you the reference. It's from Tafsir al-Badawi, and it says here that at the time when the Mus'haf of Uthman, the standardized version was reviewed, Uthman himself says, after looking at the finished product, he used to say there were some errors inside it. That is why the mother of the believers, Aisha, with the son of Uthman, would say that there were errors in the Quran, not only grammatical errors, but errors by the scribes. And she points out in one of the passages in Surah Al-Ma'idah, where she points out, Inna alladhina
Your
amanu
5
wal
minutes are up, clown.
amanu a'udu al-was. Say again?
Your 5 minutes are up, clown.
Let him finish his sentence. Let him finish. Go on, bro.
Yeah, let me finish here. This is what Aisha
Close it.
says.
Close it. You got like 10 seconds.
Yeah, I'm just one sentence and I'm done. In aladhina amanu wal aladhina wadu al asabiyuna. Aisha and the son of Uthman al-Aban said, this is an error in the Quran. Now, this is the same Quran that Uthman published and sent to 5 different provinces. Basra, Al-Madinah, and Mecca is one of them. For the life of me, talk about perfect preservation. Your Quran is toast and bust, brother. Your mic.
Ready, Muhammad?
Yeah, I'm ready. Okay.
5
Firstly,
minutes.
if you notice the entire debate, right? I made 5 arguments about Quran preservation. One, early manuscripts. Two, structural coherence of the Quran and other surahs. Three, structural coherence of Surah Azab and its abrogation. Fourth point about stylometry. Fifth point about basically the linguistic miracles, right? Ask yourself this question. Which of them did this clown address? Seriously, when did he address this point? Any of them? I asked him again and again to address the point about structure of the Quran. When did he address them? He never addressed them. Now you don't need to take my word on this, right? Just look at any website. There are numerous in this issue. Heavenly Order. I'll link that website later, right? There's a website called Structure Coherence of the Quran. Ask yourself, these structures are present in the longest surahs, in the shortest surahs. If there was tampering regarding their structures, right? If there was tampering in the surahs, how would these structures survive? They wouldn't survive. I mean, this is just common sense. These structures wouldn't survive if there was tampering. The fact that these structures survive shows that there was no tampering in the Quran. He didn't address any of the points I made regarding responding to his points. I asked him what was his criteria, right, according to which Quran is preserved and is not preserved. He said he doesn't have a criteria. Think about this. If you have no criteria on basis of which to judge something, how can you say it's preserved or not preserved? He mentioned again and again that I need to give specific verses which abrogated the 200 ayat of Surah Azab. Right? Why do I need to do that? Think about this. When I make an argument, right? I have to give evidences for my claims. And if I base my arguments on a criteria that no one accepts, would you take my claim seriously? If I made a baseless claim against Christians, right, that you need to have 100 prophecies that were fulfilled after the 10th century, would Christianity ever be proven true? It would never be proven true. Even without that criteria, Christianity wouldn't be proven true. But simple fact is, arbitrary criteria are worthless. So, again, think about this point. Think about the point I just made right now. The structural coherence of the Quran, the stylometry, the manuscripts. What room is there for doubt in Quran preservation after that? As for the Surah of Ibn Masud, right? He says in a reference that is from Imam Qurtubi and it's linked to the presentation of Dr. Ali Atai, right? This reference basically states that if I had written Surah Fatiha in the Quran, I would have written it behind every surah, before every surah, right? So this shows that Ibn Masud Anhu's Musaf does not have everything that he considered part of the Quran. If that's the case, how can he say that just because Surah Nas and Surah Falaq are not written in Ibn Masud Musaf, right? They are not in the Quran. And not once did he address my point about the mutawatir transmissions from Ibn Masud radiallahu anhu having these surahs, right? Think about this point. What would you take as more historically reliable? Something that is transmitted ahad or something that's transmitted mutawatir? Mutawatir, right? And these are four qiraat that are mutawatir, mass transmitted. So again, think about this point. Four transmitted mutawatir qiraat have Surah Falak and Surah Nas from Ibn Masud radiallahu anhu. How can this clown claim that Ibn Masud radiallahu anhu did not accept Quran preservation or that these surahs were in the Quran? And again, one more thing, one last thing, by the way. He brought up lot of references that he didn't bother to authenticate or show, right, where he got them from. He was just reading from a list. If those references are authentic, if half of them are authentic, I will never use the historical Jesus arguments again. People around here know how precious those arguments are to
One
me.
minute.
I will never use them again if half of those references are authentic that he brought. So again, don't listen to random Christian clowns when they are lying about our records, right? Just take the word simple. Listen to what even the Orientalist scholar says. Theodore Nolke, and I'll link his reference later, inshallah. He says that no companion disputed basically the Uthmanic recension. Even Ali Raziallahu anhu did not dispute this. He mentioned these specific points. So, what do you want to take? The authentic references from Sunni scholars and what the Orientalist scholars say, or what some random Christian clown says? This is up to you to decide what's more authentic or viable. Now, I think this debate went pretty well. I mean, he did dodge every single point I made, but yeah, I think this pretty much shows why these clowns were running away from me for months. Okay, my time's up.